Hello and welcome to episode 163 of Mark's Notcast. In the Notcast, I talk about records that I have loved and what they have done to me over the years. Now, you could wonder, are there 163 albums that Mark really, really loves? Well, as you can see from the wall of sound behind me, the answer clearly is yes. And today I'm going to be talking about an album that sold 3 million copies in the US, 500,000 in Germany, 500,000 in Spain, 100,000 in the UK. If you're able to read and detect my t-shirt, you will also know that I tend to wear episode appropriate t-shirts where I have them. And today I am going to be talking about the 7th album by Basildon's Gloom and Doom Merchants, Depeche Mode, a band that I think actually is very underrated. And by the way, Britain, if this album only sold 100,000 copies in the UK, that still equates to approximately one copy for every 550 homes in the UK, which means your average village probably has 2 copies of this album. Although, given how many copies of it I own, that's almost definitely not the case. Talk about this album. This is the bridge between Depeche Mode in the 80s and Depeche Mode in the 90s. It was recorded in the 80s. The first single was released from it in the 80s. In fact, the last Depeche Mode song of the 80s was Enjoy the Silence, which I'll explain shortly. And then straight into 1990, it set out the band for a new decade, and obviously all the trials and tribulations that the band were going to experience over the subsequent 7 or 8 years. Start off with the first single from the album. The first single released from Violator, released in about August 1989, was Personal Jesus. Here's the good old-fashioned UK 12-inch. It was the last single of Depeche Mode's of the 80s, and it didn't chart particularly well. In fact, it only got to number 13 in the charts. So Personal Jesus got lower in the charts than, in reverse order, Suffer Well, Precious, Dream On, I Feel Loved, Barrel of a Gun, It's No Good, In Your Room, Condemnation, I Feel You, People are People, Master and Servant, The Meaning of Love, See You, and New Life. All sold more and got higher in the charts. Well, they got higher in the charts anyway than Personal Jesus. So this song, a song that Depeche Mode have played approximately 24,177 times live, and have played at near enough every show they've ever played. This song charted lower than The Meaning of Love, which I think if you ask anybody what the worst Depeche Mode song is, they'll probably mention The Meaning of Love, actually, because it's a no good, very bad, terrible, awful Depeche Mode song. Personal Jesus is, without any controversy, I've forgotten how to speak. Without any controversy, Personal Jesus is a better song than The Meaning of Love. And I'm running a forum discussion at the moment around Depeche Mode, and Personal Jesus is the second highest scoring Depeche Mode song at 4.95 out of 5 on an average. The only song that scored more than that will be revealed shortly. So let's talk a little bit about Personal Jesus. It's a controversial song. For a period of time, it was the biggest selling 12-inch in the world, and certainly was the biggest selling 12-inch on Sire and Warner Brothers Records. In America, it sold something like 700,000 copies on 12-inch in 1989 when it was released. And it really set the template for Depeche Mode's current sound, and that template is a mixture of kind of like electronic blues and miserable lyrics. Personal Jesus is a song that was written by Martin Gore around the relationship between Elvis and Priscilla Presley, the idea being that Elvis was Priscilla's personal Jesus, a saviour somehow. But the song translates into a number of different kind of ways. So it's actually a love song to a more generic, undirected kind of idea of a saviour of some description. Some people will tell you that the relationship that they're in, they have been, saved by love, or their life has been changed by that person. To an extent, that person will be their personal Jesus, the thing that they kind of direct their faith and their belief in the better parts of the world towards. And this song does not muck about when it comes to that. It also kind of digs in really clearly to Martin Gore's not particularly well hidden love of glam rock. He particularly likes pre-Scandal, some of the work of Gary Glitter, but also fairly clearly likes things like T-Rex, Sweet, Slade, things like that, with big chunky guitar riffs and thundering drums. And lo and behold, Personal Jesus has big chunky guitar riffs and thundering drums. Although the rhythm parts on Personal Jesus are not just drums, because sometimes it's actually members of the band stomping on a flight case to give the sound a bit of extra oomph, to put it technically. And also the guitar lines, Dave Garn actually echoed some of the guitar lines just by shouting in key, trying to replicate the sound of the guitars, which means that the slide guitar on the song Personal Jesus doesn't really sound like slide guitar at all. It sounds like something a little bit more organic, a little bit more personal. It also sounds, by the way, bloody brilliant. This is one of my favourite Depeche Mode songs. I've seen them play it live at, I think, every show I've seen Depeche play. The song was recorded mostly in Milan, so it was one of the very first songs to be recorded in sessions for the album, and it was the first single that was to be released. It was completed before the rest of the LP was released, and as I said, it only reached number 13 in the charts, and this was despite Depeche putting it technically formatted it to fuck. Sorry to swear, but it was very big formatting indeed. So there was a standard UK 12-inch, there was a remix UK 12-inch. Here is a promo version of the remix 12-inch. This remix 12-inch has the pump mix and the hash mix of the B-side track Dangerous on there in a generic Commute Records company sleeve. The 12-inch of Personal Jesus is backed with the Holier Than Thou approach and a sensual mix of Dangerous. Dangerous, the B-side, is one of the very best B-sides of all time. Not quite good enough to go on the LP, although it certainly would have been good enough to fit on any other Depeche Mode LP. And it's also backed with an acoustic version of Personal Jesus, sung by Dave. So it really is, I completely see why it was a damn good selling release. There was a 7-inch single. By the way, the back of the 12-inch has a picture of Dave Garn and a woman with her bottom out. The 7-inch has a picture of Martin Gore and a woman and her bottom out. And this has a 7-inch mix of Personal Jesus and an untitled definitive mix of Dangerous on it. And when I bought this and I listened to the B-side of Dangerous, I'm like, if that's a B-side, that band are bloody brilliant. Of course, it just happens to have been one of the best B-sides the band ever did. They also did a limited edition Gatefold 7-inch single here. This features all 4 members next to a picture of a lady with her bottom out. And on the B side, it features the hash mix edit of Dangerous in the acoustic version of Personal Jesus. Now, the hash mix is a terrible, terrible 12-inch indeed. It's a terrible, awful, no good, very bad remix where everything apart from Dave Garn saying the word Dangerous has been removed and replaced with a generic sound-alike techno backing. And the Gatefold 7-inch handily has pictures of every single member of the band with said lady, and I was just like, even as a 17-year-old when that came out, I did think that was a bit gratuitous to have that on your 7-inch single. But I was a fan of the band, I listened to the music, that's what I liked, that's what mattered to me. It was far more important that the music was fantastic as opposed to the cover was gratuitous. Obviously the album Violator was named after, in Depeche Mode's mind, a parody of what a bad heavy metal LP might be called. You could easily imagine something like Violator sharing its title with a great lost unreleased album by the Scorpions, who also gave us such terrible albums as Love at First Sting and Virgin Killer, and so therefore Violator would naturally be the sequel to that. However, the Scorpions never made anything that was great apart from an annoyance to anybody. Dangerous was a fantastic B-side. Personal Jesus came on 2 CD singles in the UK. So this is one of them. This is the standard UK CD single. Has a nice picture of Ellen and someone with their bottom showing. It's got what's called a mini CD here. So they used to do CD singles on 3-inch CDs. And that's one of the reasons why, if you have a CD player, you can see it's got a tiny indentation on it for 3-inch CDs still. I don't understand why, but that's just how it is. and they came with adapters as well. And then they stopped putting adapters in, and then they stopped doing 3-inch CDs, because the maximum amount of music you could get on a 3-inch CD was about 20 minutes, which oddly enough was the exact length mandated by the British phonographic industry, around the length of a single at the time. So it all made sense. This is a limited remix single of Personal Jesus. This has the pump mix, a telephone stomp mix, which was remixed by Flood in Milan, and the hash mix of Dangerous, which was remixed by Daniel Miller, one of the very worst remixes that Daniel Miller ever did. In America, we also got the CD single. It was an 8-track CD single containing all the tracks from the 7-inch, the 12-inch, and the remix 12-inch. And yes, it had a picture of that, which does kind of make me wonder why they bothered, really. That's Personal Jesus. It's a fantastic song. The band play it live now at every show, assuming we still will have shows. I think the world has come back to concerts. And also, Personal Jesus has gifted to the world the finest Depeche Mode GIF or GIF, depending on your point of view. It is, which is the sign that says "Reach Out and Touch Dave" from the devotional concert film, which was shot and recorded by Anton Corbijn. The next song that Depeche Mode released was not just a game changer, it was a life changer. It's the kind of music that Quincy Jones would call house music, because you can buy houses with the amount of money that those songs generate. It was first performed on a television show called Peter's Pop Show on the 2nd of December 1989, featuring a mix of a track that had yet to come out and wouldn't come out for another 2.5 months. We have the very last song of the 80s released by Depeche Mode, but also the very first song of the 90s, Enjoy the Silence, the very best Depeche Mode song that there probably is. It's the only song that I've seen get a full-on 5 out of 5 from absolutely everybody anywhere who's ever heard it. I'm running a Depeche Mode song by song thread on a well-known audio snobs forum at the moment, and Enjoy the Silence is the only song that's got full marks from absolutely everybody. 5 out of 5. And when I saw this cover, this picture, this photograph of this white painted leaf, and I thought, if that's the single cover, the album cover is going to have to be amazing, because that looks like an album cover. It was just fantastic. Everything about the band at this point was absolutely 100% gelling and working in perfect harmony. Each member of the band had their own role, their own particular area of specialism. Dave was interpreting the songs, Martin was writing the songs and playing guitar, Alan was producing, Fletch describes his role as bumming around, but Fletch was more concentrating on the non-musical part of the group. So, for example, choosing things like, mixes, mix titles, sequences, album covers, those type of things. And so therefore, somehow, in most worlds, this would have been the cover of the LP, not Depeche Mode. This was only a single cover, which is incredible because it's just such a perfect little image. It's probably the perfect Depeche Mode song. And I should point out, by the way, that the version of Enjoy the Silence, there is an extended 7-inch mix of it, which is only available these days on the DVD releases of the singles 86 to 98 and the complete singles video collection that has an alternate intro. That alternate intro, by the way, is, I think, the best version of the intro that the song can have. When we get to the LP itself, what you'll see is side 1 ends with Waiting for the Night and side 2 starts with Enjoy the Silence. And that little intro, that just rising, gentle, kind of somewhat ambient chord sequence, which beds underneath the chorus, would be the perfect opening to side 2, but they truncated it so that there's the only version of Enjoy the Silence that you can get, aside from on DVD as a 7-inch mix, is this version, which is shorter. Enjoy the Silence was also formatted to fuck, to put it technically. It had a very interesting, one could say almost adventurous release strategy. So week 1 we had the cassette single, which had the B-side of, I think, Sibling, Mephisto, and we had the 12-inch and the CD. So the first week, 12-inch, CD and cassette. These were backed with the 7-inch mix, the Hands and Feet mix, the Ecstatic dub, and Sibling on there. The cassette single had an extra track called Mephisto. Now, Mephisto got a release officially on vinyl and on CD. 1 week later, Depeche released the 3 additional remix formats of Enjoy the Silence. They released the 7-inch single, they released the CD single, the second CD single, and the second 12-inch single, which effectively had a mirror image of the cover of Enjoy the Silence here. And this was pretty big-headed, actually. Depeche knew they'd sell a lot of copies of their particular records. So, of course, what were they going to do? They were going to go and release them 1 a week, because fans would go out and they'd buy the 3 new formats every week, which means you get 3 extra sales, which means you'd stay in the charts for a little bit longer. Depeche Mode fans were not the kind of guys that would buy it in the second week. Depeche Mode fans would buy all of it the second that they could buy it, and then they wouldn't buy it again. So if you release it once a week and drip feed it out to the public, it stays in the charts for longer. And Ford Mondeo man, of course, who wants to buy a copy of Violator here, would take a view and go, that song I heard on the radio a few times, that's quite good, I'm going to buy it. But that's an absolutely sneaky but fantastic way of doing it, because it means you get a lot more copies sold of your particular album. And of course, as I've mentioned before, worldwide sales of Violator are somewhere in the region of 7 million copies. That's a lot of music. And of course, with a lot of music comes a lot of money, loads of money, everything counts. And then later comes the drugs. And so Enjoy the Silence, second week, it had the bassline mix, the harmonium mix, a Ricky Tick Tick mix, whatever that is, and Memphisto. And Memphisto was obviously on the cassette single and on the 7-inch. So unless you bought the cassette single week 1, then Memphisto was a new track that was released in the second week of the song's existence. The harmonium mix of Enjoy the Silence, by the way, is a polished up re-recording of the original demo by Martin, and Martin sings the vocal on the harmonium mix. It's a completely different alternate recording. It's not just a remix, it's a re-recorded version of the demo. When the demo of Enjoy the Silence was presented to the rest of the band, it was a very, very basic, very slow track by Martin, sounding very, very similar to the harmonium, just recorded on cheaper equipment at home. And Alan's idea was, well, actually, let's speed the song up, throw a guitar line into there. I mean, basically, the thing that made Enjoy the Silence a hit was definitely not anyone apart from Alan and the band's producer, Flood, who went through and went, we sense a hit in here, we need a faster pace, and they built the rhythm track up. And it was the first time the band had listened to Enjoy the Silence in the studio. They listened to it, and for the first time whilst recording anything, they thought, I think we've got a hit. They didn't normally feel like that. They didn't normally think we've got a hit. But Enjoy the Silence, obviously one of the best Depeche tracks that there is. The CD that was released in the UK of Enjoy the Silence has a version of the Hands and Feet mix that is 40 seconds shorter than the version on the American CD. Because of UK chart rules, the band edited 40 minutes out of the CD so that it could fit onto the CD and fit in with the UK chart rules, by the way. So there you have it. The only other thing I will say about the video is that Anton Corbijn, in his infinite wisdom, wanted Dave Garn to spend 5 days walking up and down various hills and mountains in Scotland. For some reason, when you play a song to Anton Corbijn, he thinks things like, I see a king on his own in a set of mountains, or I see nuns roller skating with beaks. Those are the type of things he thinks. That's why he is who he is. And the video for Enjoy the Silence only has one line that is mimed by or lip synced by Dave Garn, and then the line is, words are very unnecessary, they can only do harm. Everything else, no lip syncing at all. And then the final, third release of Enjoy the Silence came again a week after that, and it was the quad final mix, which was a compilation of 4 different remixes put together as one track that runs for about 15 minutes. This is an unusual release. It comes on a single-sided etched 12-inch with a special inner sleeve. You can really see that Mute were putting their money where their mouth is here. And again, you look at that image and you go, damn, that is good. That looks like an LP cover. This is the image that launched 1,000 t-shirts. And as I will later point out, the quad final mix comes on one side of the vinyl here, On the other side of the vinyl, we have an etched version of the DM logo. This is the version of the 12-inch that I have loved for 31 years. This is the very 12-inch that I've been playing all that time, for a third of a century. It's pretty crazy to think about it, having loved music for that long. But I'm beginning to think that me loving music is not actually a phase, it's the start of a lifelong relationship. And so the quad final mix, not the last remix of Enjoy the Silence that was ever issued, but you do have to wait 14 years before any new mixes of Enjoy the Silence make it out into the big bad world. So there we have it. Then March 19th, 1990, Depeche Mode's 7th studio album, Violator. Again, this is probably one of the most tattooed band images that there is around Depeche Mode. If you got a Depeche Mode tattoo, you've almost definitely got this one, by the way. And so it's 9 songs, 47 minutes and 1 second. The first and initial vinyl releases of the album, by the way, in the US and in the UK, contain a unique mix of Personal Jesus that is edited very slightly, so that it fits fully onto one side of a vinyl disc. And so you open up the inner sleeve. This is an original copy from the 90s, by the way. Depeche Mode reissues, and the versions that are currently in print, by the way, do have gatefold sleeves, and the originals don't. Here's the inner sleeve. This copy has seen a lot of love. It's been played a lot of times. You can clearly tell it's battered, because remember, when we were buying these things, we weren't thinking, well, what's the world going to look like in 30 years time? We were thinking, this band could be our life, and we were listening to that, and that's how we were approaching everything. By the look of it, this copy was sold from Our Price, because it's got the exact same size sticker and location that Our Price Records used to have it. Probably says $6.99. And it's also got a Violator World Tour merchandise booklet. So I picked this up when I went to see Depeche on the 22nd of November 1990 at the Birmingham NEC, the last venue the band played on the Depeche Mode World Violation Tour in 1990. And that was a strange and unusual experience, seeing the band live. We also have, by the way, and I'm going to quickly run through, here's the CD version of Violator. And if there is a format that CD was designed for, it's definitely Depeche Mode's Violator. It is the format for which I think CD was designed. It's elegant, it's electronic, it's almost untouchable, it's cold and cool at exactly the same time. And it just looks like you're holding a really nice work of art, a mass-produced work of art. Some CDs, you know, they put together the booklet, and it's obvious they don't give a shit around what it looks like. They don't give a shit around how cool it is. I mean, if you've seen Megadeth album covers, I'm just going to pick one out here at random. You know, that is not a classy CD cover by any stretch of the imagination. That is not an album sleeve that you should be framing behind glass. Violator, that is a portable, mass-produced, very accessible work of art. And you know, a good album cover is worth its weight in platinum albums. It really, really is. It will help sell it. Then we've got the lyric sheets in there on the CD, and then finally, in one of the little formats, somewhere in one of the little panels, yes, you've got tiny pictures of the band members. There's Dave and Alan there in that tiny little corner, and then Martin and Fletch there in that tiny little corner. So they're clearly not doing that thing that I find very, very lazy about album covers, which is pictures of bored millionaires standing around next to a tree or a car or perhaps a plane with their own logo put on it, that type of thing. This is one of the bootleg remix CDs of Violator. There were an awful lot of shit, crappy bootleg remix CDs that were released. Depeche Mode were one of the most bootleg bands in the world. And one of the great things about liking a band that's bootlegged heavily is, firstly, it means you never have any money. Secondly, what it means is there's a difference between selling an album and loving an album. And some of the smaller selling bands had lots of bootleg CDs because the guys that made bootleg CDs and LPs realised it's not how much an album sells, it's how much a band is loved that defines whether someone's going to buy the bootlegs. Because if they're going to do a lot of bootlegs, then the fans are going to be the people that are going to love absolutely everything the band does, which is perhaps why some bands that sell absolutely enormous amounts don't get much in the way of bootleg releases, because the bootleg guys, they realise people just like the band. They don't love the band. They're not going to track down, for example, a hand-produced coloured vinyl version of every single show from Celine Dion's tour. I don't want to disrespect Celine Dion, but I don't think she's perhaps as loved as much as some other bands are. Maybe if you really, really love her, that is absolutely true, but there aren't that many of you compared to, say, Metallica fans or Depeche Mode fans or Cure fans. Sorry, people, that's a commercial decision that's made by the bootleg guys. This is one of the remix CDs. It's got a combination of DJ only remixes, fan made remixes, and rare and unreleased mixes. It does feature, by the way, the Kazan Cathedral mix of Personal Jesus, which is not available on anything apart from a sampler CD. The Kazan Cathedral mix was never officially released, although it was on a compilation sampler, and the Kazan Cathedral mix is the one that is now used as the basis for the band's live arrangements of Personal Jesus. So the band released their third single from the album, and the third single, Policy of Truth. Again, this song is real Marmite for Depeche Mode fans. You either love it or you hate it. There's no middle ground around it. You either love Policy of Truth or you hate it. Luckily, most people love it, which is good, because I think it's an absolutely great song. It's got here's a 7-inch of Policy of Truth, with a strategically placed arm covering a perhaps unblurred nipple, and a lovely kind of, it just looks like it's a nice work of art. The colours, the design, the layout, there's clearly been thought that's been applied to this release. Not necessarily the case for lots of other bands. I mean, I don't want to sound like a label snob, although I probably am. You open a 7-inch single and it's just a die cut and imprinted silver bit of text, and it doesn't feel as good. It doesn't feel as nice. It doesn't feel as sexy as having a record that's got a label on it. Oh my God, he's become one of those guys. Yes. I know. Policy of Truth was released on 2 12-inches. Here's one that was sold by H&V, £3.49, and here is the remix 12-inch of Policy of Truth. The 12-inch of Policy of Truth is backed with a beatbox mix that's effectively the extended 12-inch version, the Capital mix, which is again a slightly different 12-inch version. The barcode was put on the label sleeve as well, which was a nice design choice here. It's also backed with a track called Khalid, which is effectively a really short version of the word kaleidoscope, and it's Khalid is a very kind of moody instrumental by Martin, but has a moody instrumental also. It's the most Recoil-like Depeche Mode track. Recoil being Alan Wilder's solo project, although I hate to use the word projects because I don't think of bands as projects necessarily, although they probably do. Khalid is the song that sounds the most like Alan Wilder's band Recoil. If you like Khalid, try Recoil. They are really good, and it's obviously Alan Wilder's production in full pelt. Here's a 12-inch remix of Policy of Truth. It has this picture on the inside there, a woman discreetly covering various parts of her anatomy, and then some of the images which go onto the various CD singles and 12-inch and cassette single covers as well. The remix 12-inch of Khalid has on it the Trans Central mix, which was remixed by the KLF, a remix of Khalid, again just a standard 12-inch mix, and a thing called Pavlov's Dub, which I have no memory of Pavlov's Dub mix whatsoever. There was also 2 CD singles. This again the 12-inch tracks, and then this a 5-track version with the tracks from the 7-inch and the remix 12-inch on there as well. And again you can see kind of blown up versions of the imagery, and there's the negative version of that, but on the inside just text. I'm sure there are various different versions for various different countries. Policy of Truth is a really interesting song, primarily because where it's placed on the album, by the way, is it's side 2, track 2. Oops, wrong album. And side 2, track 2 is traditionally seen as one of the kind of filler slots on an LP. So I've talked earlier around the way in which sequencing of an album is really, really important. So let's pick up the Violator album and talk through the sequencing of it. The first track is World in My Eyes. And World in My Eyes is, again, one of the best Depeche songs there is. The forum poll that I'm running, it says it's 4.95 out of 5, which is a nice way of saying that it's got 99% of people that like it love it. So it's one of the very best and highest scoring Depeche songs. And World in My Eyes has a really interesting production around it. If you listen to the instrumental version of World in My Eyes, what you'll find is each verse, each chorus, each bridge, each section is designed differently. They sound different. It's not just a replication of the same thing. Various effects drop in and out in between verses and choruses. So the instrumental backing is varied. It follows the same kind of broad structure, and it's clearly the same song, but at the same point it's an exploration of each of the component parts of the song. So there's no bar on the song that is the same as a bar later on in the same song, even if you listen to the instrumental versions. And it's got a very Kraftwerk style drum sound that's been put through a whole bunch of kind of effects pedals and delay pedals and things like that. And there's even on World in My Eyes, I think there's one section where there's a reverse snare drum, just one reverse snare drum sound on its own, that's designed to just pull you out of the song and then pull you straight back in, and just to keep the song fresh. It's also got, and I think I've mentioned this before, one of Alan Wilder's great production tricks, which is to have two bass lines that interloop around each other. So it sounds like one, but if you listen to it, it's actually two bass parts that are being played. And one of them acts in a call and response to the vocals, and the other one beds up next to the rhythm track of the kick drum, the bass drum, and the snare. Fantastic production work, by the way. This has not aged at all. This still sounds like a fabulous future that we never quite got to live in, thanks to politics and Brexit and things like that. But it is an absolutely fantastic track. Second track on the album is Sweetest Perfection, and the 8th track on the album is Blue Dress. And Sweetest Perfection and Blue Dress are both sung by Martin. So effectively, it bookends the album. So the second song and the second from last song on the album are sung by Martin. They're both ballads, and unsurprisingly, they are both about sex, because that's one of the things that Martin's really, really good at writing about. But they effectively act as bookends around the album. And the last song on the album, Clean, has some fantastic production tricks in it, by the way. Because what it does is Clean as a song almost acts as an encore on its own. So it reminds a lot of people of Pink Floyd's One of These Days. It's got a very similar kind of undulating, repetitive bass line that's full of echo. And it adds and removes elements as the song continues, and then the song comes to a close, and then it comes back with a second false ending, almost like a pulse that sounds like a reprise. Not a very basic fade in, fade out, but the song actually ends, and then it kind of comes back in a kind of surprise horror movie section. Like at the end of Carrie, when the hand comes out through the mud from the grave at the end, or the bit where you hear someone's evil cackling voice and a shot of Freddy Krueger's glove. That's exactly what Clean does at the end. It's got that false ending that fools you into a sense of finality and completeness, and then the song comes back and goes, boo, fooled you. And it works perfectly. Great song to end the album on, by the way, Clean. And the other thing I will say also about the whole of the album is that if you listen to the album and the drum patterns, although they're very clearly on an electronic kit, all of the drum parts on the album, almost all of them, are actually played live onto an electronic kit and then looped and sequenced. So you listen to the drum parts that we've got on these songs, especially things like Policy of Truth, Enjoy the Silence, they sound human. They sound like they've been played by a human being, and they absolutely have, but they've been looped. And the other way is when you listen to a drum part that someone's programmed, as opposed to a drum part that someone's played. The programmed part is very, very rigid. Every little offbeat, every little human little frailty or idiosyncrasy, every little fill has to be programmed. Someone's had to think that through. Whereas when you're playing it on an electronic kit, what you can do is you can just throw in because your hands are bored, you can think, well, I'll throw in a fill here, I'll put a splash there, I'll put some tom lines here, those type of things. And the drum parts for the whole of the album are played on electronic pads and then looped and sequenced and played again. So it sounds like a human being is playing them, because if you were programming these parts, you wouldn't think of the fills that there are in the songs that break up the songs, that add punctuation to the songs and add rhythm to it. So one of the most boring songs ever to play on the drums, by the way, is a song called The Golden Path by the Flaming Lips, because the drums were done by the Chemical Brothers. And of course, when you're programming drums, it doesn't matter, because drum machines don't get bored. And so Golden Path has a very rigid fall to the floor, boom, 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 and then you repeat that for about 4.5 minutes without any change. Now, if you're a human being playing that part, that is tedious and it is boring. But if you're a human being, you wouldn't just go boom, 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 boom for 4.5 minutes. Every once in a while, maybe at the end of a verse, or maybe if you lead into a chorus, you'll put in a fill, you'll put in a run, you'll put some toms in, you'll put some extra elements in, you might have a splash on the cymbals, that type of stuff. And the drums on this album are fantastic. They're compelling, they're propulsive, they're repetitive, they're compulsive. They don't stop. The rhythm parts keep going, but at the same point, there's enough punctuation and enough variation inside each of the drum parts to remind you that you are listening to music made by humans and not music made by computers for computers. I've mentioned in previous episodes George Orwell's Versificator, the machine that makes music that's sung by the proles. This is not a versificator song. This is stuff where you listen to it and you go, that was touched by the hand of a human, those parts. I can really tell when I listen to the rhythms, that is a person playing, even if they're playing an electronic kit and it sounds like a machine. It's a human pretending to be a machine, not a machine being a machine that's been programmed by a human. There's a slight difference in that. Feel, of course, is everything. And what is music and art if it's not something about feelings and emotions? So I haven't even mentioned fourth track on the album. Third track, Personal Jesus. Fantastic. Or, to quote the great Michael McKeegan from Therapy, fan-fucking-tastic. Track 4, Halo. A single that never was but should have been, but it was a single. And Halo is still regarded, I think, and when I ran the numbers on it, 4.82 out of 5 was the average on that. It's one of the very best Depeche Mode songs. And Halo is the first Depeche Mode song that really kind of taps into the sense of impending doom and unspecified guilt, which is something that, by the way, a lot of Martin Gore songs in future will deal with. So Walking in My Shoes, Condemnation, Judas, all those songs, Barrel of a Gun, for example, as well. They're all songs around how you feel guilt and remorse and having fucked up, and how you then deal with and process that. And when it all falls apart and when the walls come tumbling down, although we will deserve it, it will have been worth it. That is the chorus to Halo. That is a fantastic chorus. Halo is one of the very best Depeche Mode songs that there is. And Halo, by the way, features again an electronic part that's played by a human, but it's sampled from a drum break from Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks, and then sampled off a old school, although it was very current then in 1989, hip-hop track, and then it's been again processed and played and replicated on a kit. It's also got 2 bass lines, and it also features, by the way, one of the riffs from Policy of Truth that sits underneath the verses occasionally, and then when it pops back into Policy of Truth, you listen to it and go, oh, it's the riff from Halo. So it's drawing a counterpoint between the 2 songs. Halo, fantastic. I cannot recommend it enough. Although obviously you've already worked out, I've already recommended it substantially. Halo is one of the very favourite Depeche Mode tracks. It's been remixed. Here's a bootleg 12-inch from 2004 by South Tribe Funk of bootleg remixes of Halo. Halo was also released as a single, by the way, in 2004, but only on vinyl. In 2004, the band released their best remixes album, Remixes 81-2004, and so Enjoy the Silence got remixed by Timo Maas and Ewan Pearson. There was a second 12-inch that came with it that is in fact the only single release. Technically, It Makes Something to Do was released as a single in 2004 with the Black Strobe remix, backed with a remix of World in My Eyes. And then also, finally, the Goldfrapp mix of Halo, which has extra vocals by Alison Goldfrapp, was released in 2004. It was the B-side to Enjoy the Silence on CD. It was also the A-side to this 12-inch. So this is the Halo 12-inch remix, although technically, obviously, since it is 14 years after the fact, it doesn't necessarily count as an actual single release. I also haven't mentioned Policy of Truth, which I really should, because in the traditional slot, track 2, it's normally where the filler comes in, but since this track was so strong, Policy of Truth made it into there. Now, Policy of Truth was a bitch to record. It was recorded first at Puck, then it was re-recorded almost completely at the church during the closing of the sessions in 1990. And the 7-inch mix of Policy of Truth is longer. It has a different intro, but also it's not. It sounds like it's a guitar, but it isn't. It's a single note on a guitar that's fed into a sequencer and then pitch shifted and replayed back. They did try it with the flute as the main riff. That understandably sounded atrocious, so they binned it, to put it technically. And it's also, by the way, if you listen to the rhythm track on Policy of Truth, each verse, each chorus has a different set of drum treatments and next to it, so each one sounds different. You can't cross-match identically the drum parts between the various elements of the song. The band went on tour after the album was released, and they did the World Violation tour, which covered about 60 or 70 shows: America, Australia, Japan, and Europe. They didn't release or any live recordings from that. No shows were filmed on that tour. There was just one existing Betamax tape of a 2-camera shot live, I think, at the LA Dodgers Stadium, which was taken from the screens on the side of the stage. The tour has been bootlegged many times. Here is one of the bootleg CDs called Waiting for the Night. It's an audience recording, which I think is from San Francisco or Detroit or Dallas or somewhere. I cannot remember where. I think that the actual cover, which is this, atrocious, so I've used the inside sleeve for it. It's double CD, it's an audience recording. It's clearly taken from a vinyl rip as well, because it is shorter and it is missing some songs. So for example, it has Everything Counts twice, although they didn't play Everything Counts. It doesn't necessarily have both of the acoustic numbers. It doesn't have A Question of Time or Black Celebration on it. So if you're going to buy a recording from the tour, don't buy that, buy this one, A Nice Surprise, recorded in Paris on the 23rd of October 1990. It's a great audience recording. It has one of the very rare versions of, I think, Blue Dress and Little 15 that were played on the show. It's got the full show, and on disc 2 it's also got one of the very earliest circulating Depeche songs or Depeche recordings, which is Southend Technical College in 1980, featuring versions of Ghost of Modern Time, Television Set, and a number of other songs from the very early years. As I said, the band didn't record any shows on the tour. They didn't record any shows on the tour because 101 had only come out less than a year previously, and releasing a live VHS or DVD or an album of every tour was just something that didn't happen at that point. It was a major investment. The fourth and last single from the album was the absolutely fantastic World in My Eyes. And World in My Eyes, by the way, has a multitude of formats. It has a 7-inch, there's Fletch, it has a 12-inch, there's Alan, it has a CD, I think that's Dave, and then on the inside there's also Martin there on the 12-inch. So the 12-inch of World in My Eyes features the remix called the Oil Tank Mix, which is a fantastic extended 12-inch mix. It's also backed with 2 extra tracks, Happiest Girl and Sea of Sin. Happiest Girl is one of the very first songs. It's really the bridge between this album and Music for the Masses. It was the first song to be recorded for the album. Sea of Sin, not so good, clearly B-side material. There were 2 12-inches, there were 2 CDs, and yes, there's a bootleg CD, or bootleg 12-inch as well. The second 12-inch of World in My Eyes came in this blue snap pack thing with a little line that you had to cut through. It told you could violate it here. Sneaky old sausages. And it had a special barcode on it because you couldn't read the orange barcode through the blue plastic. Hello. And it's also got the images of the band members on there. This comes with again, pictures of all 4 band members on there. It has an absolutely fantastic remix, the Mode to Joy remix by John Marsh of The Beloved, and it comes in a special inner sleeve with photography by Anton Corbin from the tour, including a live drum set that Alan did play during Clean, and there's the inside of it as well. This is one of the loveliest 12-inches that there is. It's probably quite difficult, and an unviolated copy of it is probably quite expensive to get. There's also a number of other versions of the single. There are a couple of CD singles here of World in My Eyes, both of which somehow are upside down. But there's the standard one, which has the 7-inch mix and the 12-inch tracks, and then this one, which has 6 remixes, including an only available on CD I think Dub to Joy mix, or I think it's called their track 6 Mayhem Mode mix, which you could only get on this CD single. There was a bootleg 12-inch. Here it is, World in My Eyes, the Peter Black Acid Trip mix, which I bought from Discogs when I was filling out my Discogs orders and needed to make up minimum order values. There was also this 12-inch, which was unissued mixes of Little 15 that were released unofficially in 1990, remixed by the Bogus Brothers, whoever they were, and the Violation 15 remix later made it out on the remixes 8104. Right, last thing that we have is the merch. So I saw the tour. I saw them at the Birmingham NEC on the 22nd of November 1990. That was the day when Margaret Thatcher was deposed and fired by her cabinet. I walked into work going, I'm going to go and see Depeche Mode today. Got to work. We had a new Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher had been sacked, and then I went to see Depeche Mode in the night. Overall, one of the better days of my life. You look at the prices of these things, by the way, the various t-shirts, and I think it's £10 for a t-shirt, and £5 for a programme, and £12.95 for the book Strangers by the Anton de Corbie, which I mentioned to you previously. This, bloody rare these days. Lots of photographs from the Violator era. Basically, it's an extended version of the World Violation tour book. This painting, by the way, is by Dave Garn of the cover. And the tour book is again pictures of millionaires standing around looking bored, thinking about all that lovely money that they're going to make when they go on tour. In conclusion, the last thing I will mention, the 2006 CD and DVD reissue of Violator. This is brilliant. It's got a 5-1 mix, it's got a documentary, really, really good. It hasn't got all of the videos on it, but aside from that, I strongly recommend these. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm going to wrap up. In case you haven't worked out, Violator is a bloody brilliant record. I rate it very, very highly. I think it really is Depeche Mode at their best. I have very fond memories of it. I can't believe it's 31 years old. I will be listening to this at least 31 years from now, although I will, of course, at that point sound like Homer Simpson talking about Grand Funk Railroad, because that's a reference I have to get in all the time, even though it's a very, very old episode of The Simpsons. That's 163. That's me talking about Depeche Mode Violator.